Welcome to Start with Hello, Conversations about Disability. In this episode, we are going to sit down and learn a little bit more about how ability ministry actually came to be. And when I thought, who in the world is the ultimate ability ministry historian, there was only one name. There was one name that came to mind, and that was Gary Spangler. For anybody who's familiar with Riverwood, Gary's name comes up an awful lot. For those who have come across ability ministry in the last 5 years or so, they may see a whole lot about our outreach, and they might not know that ability ministry actually has a very rich background that dates back several decades. So, Mr. Gary Spangler, if you would please introduce yourself and explain exactly how and when ability ministry came to be.
Well, thank you. That was quite impressive. I'm Gary Spangler, and I've been with Ability Ministry for about 13 or so years. It's just been a pleasure being a part of this. But I am proud to talk about the background and where we started. It all began in 1981 when Sam Stone, he was the editor of the Christian Standard in Cincinnati, Ohio. And Sam would visit his parents at Mount Healthy Christian Home, which was actually a retirement place that was right next door to Sam's office. And on his visits, he would often see a lady by the name of Marjorie Broxson. Well, she had cerebral palsy, and she lived at Mount Healthy, but she was much younger than most of the people there. And on this particular day, she asked Sam, I like it here. There are good folks operating the home, but all the other residents here are a lot older than me, and I don't really have a chance to do many things I'm able to do or I want to do. I wish our churches provided a home to help handicapped people. Well, Sam agreed and said, well, yes, that would be nice, but it would take a lot of money to build a facility like that. Without hesitation, she responded to Sam, it took a lot of money to build Mount Healthy Home too. Well, that's all it took for Sam to start thinking and asking himself, why can't we do that? What's the problem here? So Sam, along with several pastors, got together and started raising money. Once they had the money, they found Dr. Jim Pearson, who at the time was the executive director of the East Tennessee Children's Rehabilitation Center. Long story short, Jim accepted the position of executive director for this new organization called the Christian Church Foundation for the Handicapped. Property was purchased, and the first resident moved in the summer of 1986. Jim did a great job leading this organization until 2009 when he retired, and I was hired to be the executive director. Well, it was around 2009, I guess. Our society began to change, and the word handicap became such a negative word. And so we changed our name from Christian Church Foundation for the Handicapped to the Christian Church's Disability Ministry. I wanted to simply get rid of that word handicapped. But then just a few years ago, we changed the name again, and it's a lot of work. As you know, it takes a lot of work to change a name, but we did it. And this time to Ability Ministry, because if you look at the word disability, it basically means without ability. And believe me, people who are affected by disability are anything but people who have no ability. So we're very proud of our name because it encourages people to stop placing obstacles in front of people and let them focus on the abilities that God gave them to use their abilities for God. As a matter of fact, 1 Corinthians 12:22, Paul writes to the church in Corinth, on the contrary, those who seem to be weaker are indispensable, meaning we cannot be complete. The church cannot be complete without those affected by disability. And if we look deep inside each one of us, we see that we all have disability.
And I think when I came on board, I remember CCDM, Christian Church's Disability Ministry. And I thought, could we not have come up with something longer? Why is this so lengthy of a name? And I remember when we changed it to Ability Ministry, we still had all this history, had all this knowledge, all this experience. We had no new resources. So it was it felt brand new without being brand new. And I'm glad that you mentioned the history, especially of the name changes. I don't think that any disability serving organization would have the term handicapped in the title these days.
That's exactly right.
Evident of how things have changed over the years. But that's the word handicap. I zeroed in on that a little bit. I don't remember the first time you and I ever talked about Riverwood, which is our residential ministry in Louisville, Tennessee. I don't remember that first conversation. It just, in a way, it kind of feels like it was just always there. But I keyed in on the word handicapped. I keyed in on the word disability, disabled. And for some reason, I had the word facility in my mind. And I don't know if that was just my inexperience or fear or apprehension. I somehow had it in my head that Riverwood was a nursing home. And so I was really surprised when I went there for the first time. And I felt, honestly, I was kind of embarrassed when I saw it. That, like, well, what did you expect? Were you expecting some kind of medical facility with guards and locked doors and plexiglass? I don't know why I had keyed in on those words that I did, but for those that have never been to Riverwood, if you could walk us through what that property actually looks like.
Yeah, it's quite amazing, actually. You're not the first, you won't be the last visitor who makes their first visit to Riverwood thinks that it's more institutionalized. It really is a home. It's a place where we have fun. We enjoy life. We experience life. We've got 12 acres on Fort Loudon Lake. Just so you know, it's pronounced Louisville, Tennessee, not Louisville.
Did I say it wrong?
You said it wrong, but that's okay. Let me tell you.
So there's a Tennessee pronunciation of. So how do you say it in Tennessee?
That's exactly right. You say Louisville,
okay.
Even though it's pronounced like Louisville. The first time I was there, they made it clear. I said, is this Louisville, Tennessee? They said, where? Louisville, Tennessee. We don't have any place in like Louisville, Tennessee around here. They said, if you're looking for Louisville, you're in the right spot. So they made it clear.
Yeah.
But we've got 12 acres there. We got 6 buildings. We got 2 group homes that work well for us. 10 residents in each house, 5 men and 5 women. It's more like a family, though. Each person has their own room and a closet. And in the older building, some residents share a bathroom, but the newer facility has a bathroom in each room and a walk-in closet, and it gives them their own personal space. They do share living areas. They do share kitchen. They do share dining room area. And I said it works well for us because there's enough room for everyone. That's really important for people affected by disability because they're just like everybody else. They like to succeed in their work and sports, but they also sometimes get aggravated with one another, get downright mad. And so that allows them the space to kind of get away from one another. We also have boyfriends and girlfriends. Let me tell you, space is needed when we have a breakup. I guarantee you that.
I think the boyfriend-girlfriend will probably have to be a different episode.
That's a whole new project. Absolutely.
We'll have to get Ryan, our president, to write some resources for the girlfriend-boyfriend episode.
Absolutely. And in addition to the 2 houses, we do have a retreat center, a shed, a detached garage that has been transformed into a culinary school called Elizabeth's Place. That's just something fantastic that's happening. There's a chef from Knoxville who wanted a place to teach people affected by disability the restaurant industry. There is a culinary school. We're just getting it started, but we're really excited about that. That's been a blessing to many people already, but we're excited to see how that's going to grow in this area.
And I like how you said home. That was the one piece that I had totally glossed over. And I don't know if you remember this, but we were talking at some point about, I don't know if it was a board meeting or if there was like a mission trip, because there's a lot of mission trips that come to Riverwood. And I remember talking to you and you mentioned that there was 1 or 2 of the residents that were nervous about people coming. And I was, again, I'm still learning, but I was thinking, what are you nervous about? And I remember you saying that so many people focused on being nervous coming to Riverwood without thinking, well, this is somebody's home. You're coming into somebody's home. They don't know who you are. And that was just kind of an eye opener for me as to this is where they live. Like, obviously, if it serves those with disabilities, you have wheelchair accessible areas, but it's so spacious there. I have never felt cramped or claustrophobic or anything. In fact, the opposite. It feels very free out there in the property.
It is true. This is their home. There's a story. One of our residents, his mother, hadn't been too long after he moved in, probably 6 months. But his mother would come and pick him up on Friday and bring him home on Sunday afternoon. And he didn't talk too much. He wasn't comfortable with doing a lot of talking. But his mother, after about 6 months, came and picked him up on a Friday. She was supposed to bring him home on Saturday. She looked at him and she said, I think I'm just going to keep you for another day. I'll take you home on Sunday, excuse me. He said, Mom, I want to go home. And she called us crying, a little bit sad, but more joy, because she said she never thought she would find a place where her son would actually be able to call home. It's not just a place where they live. So they, their pictures, they love to show people their pictures and talk about what they have in their rooms, things of theirs that are throughout the house. So it really is a home, and it's great to be a part of that.
Well, and it sounds like, since it is a home, I don't imagine that a family just shows up at the front door and knocks on it and says, hey, here's my loved one. I want to have them move in. I know that there's an application process. How does somebody come to live at Riverwood?
Well, we're licensed by the state of Tennessee. We get inspected every year. And yes, we have an application process to ensure applicants meet state requirements, because we have state requirements. Things like anyone who wishes to live at our residence must have an IQ. They have to be less than 70. They must be able to generally take care of themselves. There's some issues where we try to work with them. Sometimes they come in, we have to help them learn how to shave or learn some personal hygiene. They generally have to take care of themselves. They also have to have a psychological evaluation to make sure that there's not any mental illness there that could cause a problem or put somebody's safety in jeopardy. We are also required to have one resident manager, someone who is a supervisor there for every 10 residents that we have. And those managers are at Riverwood 24/7, 365 days a year. We never close. Our applications, just want to let people know, our applications are available on our website if anyone is interested.
So you go through these, you select, I guess, for lack of a better word, but we have a group of residents, and it's a home. It's on property. Sounds great. We've established all that. But what do they do all day? Do they work? Do they have an average day?
Well, they do have an average day. I will tell you this. We do have a process before they're even allowed to come there. When they have, submitted an application, we do have a very good process. And I want to mention this because I think it's very important. Once an application is received, our Director of Residential Services, Ronna McBride, interviews the applicant and the family over the phone, just kind of a first step thing, just to get to know one another. And if the initial contact proves positive, we move to a more formal interview and a tour. And they come out to Riverwood, and Ronna takes them around, and then she sits down with them, and we talk about things about the potential resident, because we want them to succeed. It's very important to connect with them. Once Ronna gives her okay, and the family's comfortable, the individual's comfortable, we connect a final interview with a panel. It consists of at least one board member, either the CEO or the COO, Ronna, and the resident and family, if they have some. Sometimes we do have people come in that don't have any family. And if everything goes well, then the resident will be accepted for a 60-day period. And I think this is very important for people to understand. Just because an interview is done, paperwork's filled out, does not necessarily mean it's a good fit for everyone.
Well, yeah, because I think what you said, they have to connect. It's not like you're signing a lease at an apartment building and you're just kind of moving in and you hope the neighbors are nice. You're there in close contact with people you've never lived with before, that could be really difficult. And if the match isn't perfect.
That's exactly right. It's got to be a good fit, because we want the individual to succeed.
You're kind of joining a family.
You really are. You really are, because they're going to be very close to one another, hanging out with one another, doing activities, and going to work. You asked, what do the residents do? I mean, during the interview process, we actually work very hard at determining vocational opportunities for the prospective residents. We take it very seriously, helping them find a job. So most of our residents work, and we provide their transportation. But then there are those who cannot work for various reasons. So we seek other things for them to do. Right now, we are in the process of building some raised gardens. People will have a job to do and producing food that we will use. But
they shared, I think Rana sent us a picture of that. We've shared that on our,
awesome.
Our Instagram and our Facebook. I think from what I hear, the residents are pretty excited about that.
But prior to COVID, we actually created a business of our own where we would go around and clean churches, and we would actually pay the individuals, because it's so important that they get paid. It's very important that is done, because that provides a lot of self-esteem and a lot of pride, really proves to themselves, because so many of these folks have been told they're not valuable. And so this really gives them, a first-hand opportunity to say, yes, I am valuable. Look at my paycheck.
Well, and I think a lot of people that are familiar with ability ministry in Riverwood, there's probably, I would say that there's a group of people that have no idea that there is another Riverwood. I'm sure you're going to correct me on the city. Do I say Versailles?
Nope.
Missouri? I knew I would butcher it. How do I?
Versailles.
Yeah. Wow, I was way off. And I have been saying, I think, Versailles for I don't know how long. So no wonder people look at me when I'm crazy when I say that. But so New Hope is basically another Riverwood, but it's located in Missouri.
That's correct. In 2015, a group came to me, said they had been trying to get a group home started in Versailles, Missouri, but just couldn't get over the hump. They tried. My first reaction was no way. It was too far away from a populous area where we could draw employees, because it takes a lot of employees. And an employee who works in this group home setting, there is a high turnover. So we had to make sure that we had enough people to draw from. And months later, though, I just felt like I needed to take a second look. They asked me to take a second look. I took two friends out there with me, Rana, our director of services, and a fellow by the name of Roy Rao, who worked for us at the time. And both of them gave multiple reasons why we should move forward with this. And in the end, I agreed. And once we decided to make this group home a reality, I met with a group of men called the Church Builders. They're from Stone Mountain, Georgia. They had built almost 100 churches and built our buildings at Riverwood. As a matter of fact, they built our first building in 1986. It's kind of hard to believe. But the way they operated was the church would provide the materials and the church builders would provide the workers and tools. And in this case, we purchased the materials and they provide the workers, they provided hotel rooms, they provided tools, everything they needed. Then this group, led by one of our board members, Dale Sykes, just did a great job. It's sad to say that the group no longer exists, but they did an amazing job for us. And I would like to add that they did probably, 4, 5, or 6 additional smaller projects. Over the years, with all the buildings, they saved us close to $1 million that allowed us to build these buildings without any mortgage or anything.
One of the things that I've seen, if anybody follows us on Facebook, I love sharing these pictures. They're probably some of my favorite. Riverwood sees a lot of mission teams, mission trips that come to visit. So can you talk a little bit about these mission trips, maybe explain them a little bit? What are they doing? What role do they serve? I know how important they are, but I'd love to hear from you just some of the details about why these mission trips are critical.
Yeah, for decades, literally decades, since 1986, visitors have come to Riverwood to help maintain the property on mission trips. Let me tell you, taking care of 12 acres is a huge deal. And while there is much need there when taking care of Riverwood and the 12 acres and all the buildings. There is a greater need, and I think it's very important. There are over 1 billion people in the world affected by disability, and the saddest part is that for so many, people have been afraid of connecting with those who have cognitive disabilities, ignoring them, bullying them, laughing at them. That seems to be the norm rather than the exception. And our goal for mission trips are for people to understand the incredible value of our friends with disability. Even today, there's thousands and thousands of churches that ignore their disability community as if there was a choice of people Jesus wanted us to reach, and that's just not true. And when groups come, it's amazing to see the attitudes and how some people like myself, maybe like you, who are a bit afraid at the initial visit.
Oh, it wasn't a bit. I was
it was plenty.
I was terrified. And I mentioned this in one of the previous episodes where not only did I have the entire wrong view of what Riverwood actually was, I remember, and if anybody's been out there, I was kind of in between the buildings and the grass, and I was walking, and I just thought, if I could just get through this visit without anybody here talking to me, I would be doing all right. And Kathleen, who is nonverbal, came up to me and stood, she doesn't really understand personal space all that well, and she was a lot closer than I would have liked. And I just remember thinking, I have no idea what I'm supposed to do. And it was an eye-opener. And I think that kind of experience is so unique to Riverwood. And I hear it happen to so many people who are in a position like me, apprehensive or afraid or just unsure of what to do. And then God says, okay, this is what's really going to happen. And then he drops you into this place, and it's a total life changer.
It really is. And to see how people's actions change, just their body language change after just a few hours. It's an amazing experience to sit back and watch total strangers all of a sudden become best friends, hugging and just enjoying life together. So it's quite amazing for these mission trips.
They walk in, I've seen a lot of folks walk in with that fear, and they leave the exact opposite. They leave as if they've been a part of the family since day one. And I love reading the comments that come in on Facebook, and you could tell it's the folks that have been on almost every mission trip that they could show up to, because it's the comments that they make. It's obvious that they're so deeply connected to the residents. To Rana's credit, I remember being and I think this is another huge benefit of Riverwood being as an outreach place. It was a volunteer training at Southeast Christian Church in Louisville.
There you go.
In Louisville. And I remember it was in the Shine Disability Ministry. And I so wish that I could have remembered this person's name. But he was speaking to the group. And one of the things that he mentioned was a mission trip that he went on to Riverwood. It had to have been 20 years ago, and had this amazing experience. And he's carried that with him for all of this time. And now he's imparting that on people that have never been to Riverwood. Some of those people may never be. So it's a really powerful thing to see that effect that it has on people that will probably never step foot in Riverwood.
That's it. It's true. It really is true. God uses it. Another quote that I heard from a fella who came in, and he said, I'm leading this team. I came here to be a blessing to you all. And he said, what ended up was you all were the blessing to me. Yeah. And so it's one of those things that just, it's an amazing experience, and it changes the lives. What's interesting, in a few weeks, we've got a group coming from a church whose seniors minister is on our board. He came as just a kid in a youth group years and years and years ago, and now he's bringing a team back. So it's just amazing how people are affected by these mission trips.
So if he's been coming that long, he probably stayed downstairs in the original building with all of the bunk beds, didn't he? Or he probably predated that.
No, you have experienced the bunk bed area in the basement of that old house.
Right.
On the property. It is horrible. It is the worst thing.
I'm glad you said it. I didn't want to be the one to put that out on the podcast.
I cannot believe that we used to do that, and people kept coming, and they'd gather in the evening with their group, and it was shoulder to shoulder. You couldn't breathe. It was pretty rough. But in 2019,
the retreat center.
That's right.
So that was one of the things I wanted to ask. So, because we talked about it online, and I remember the discussions of it, and I thought, wow, this is going to be a really cool thing. And then when you get there to see it, and then you realize I don't have to sleep in the bunk beds downstairs anymore.
Exactly
but it's turned out to be a really awesome thing. So tell us a little bit more about what this retreat center is.
Sure. This retreat center, we have over 125, 150 visitors every year who come and spend the night. And we needed something to assist them to maximize their experience. So we actually raised the money, got it started. 3 months before it opened, COVID hit. And we had a little bit of work that had to be done. So we just waited and finally got that done. But we've got it open. It can house 32. You can sleep 32 people. We have 2 different sizes, a men and a women's wing. And however that all works out, has a kitchen area, a gathering place, and bathrooms. People come, and the greatest thing is now I don't have to worry about those first-time visitors thinking, "Oh my goodness, I've got to sleep in this terrible place." But it is a great experience that they can return home with a better attitude. That's what it's all about. They begin to visualize and see just how wonderfully made all of us are, including those affected by disability. But one of the greatest experiences at the retreat center is we've got this large gathering room, and kids and adults get around tables and all together, and they start talking about what went right, what went wrong. But when you hear some of our kids, some of our adults say, they really are just like us, it makes your heart jump for joy. And the retreat center has just been a great addition for these folks. They can experience just all the focus on our residents. That's what it's all about.
Well, one of the cool stories that I had about the retreat center was I was there with my daughter, Lauren. I think she was 15 at the time. I can't remember. There was another church there serving, and I think that it was one of their youth groups, if I'm remembering this correctly. And Rana had asked if Lauren could talk to the group. And, Lauren she had this mix of excitement, but wait a minute, I'm really nervous. And she didn't have time to prep anything, which I think just made it so much better.
Yeah.
And I've got some great photos and videos of her in that room talking to another group from another church. And I thought, this is great. Like, this is what this room is meant to be used for. And here's my daughter who has been volunteering maybe a year and is now at Riverwood helping encourage other people to do the same thing. So, it was so neat just to see that. And of course, she even got a kick out of it that people were asking her what college she went to. And she's like, I'm a sophomore. They were totally blown away by that. But so over the years at Riverwood, and with all your experience with Riverwood, New Hope, I know that you've got stories. I know you've got stories. You've got to have stories.
Absolutely.
Is there one in particular that if you could only tell one story about Riverwood, this would be the one?
And normally when people come, and the first morning, Rana will sit down with them and tell stories. And this story is a story that's asked for year after year, but I believe it's probably the best story. It comes from one of our residents, actually, Tom. The details actually change a little bit over the years, but there was a gathering at a church, kind of like a dinner on the grounds after church. And Tom had this thing he always did. He pointed his finger. When he was going to ask you a question, he'd point that finger right to your face, and then he'd ask the question. And the question that created the most and biggest havoc was asking women how old they were. Just a no-no. And well, Ronna had talked to him over and over again about this, and at this particular occasion, Ronna made sure Tom understood not to ask any woman how old she was. And he reassured Ronna that she had nothing to worry about. And Tom had finished eating, and he walked over to this lady and pointed his finger at her, preparing for a question. Well, that got everybody up on their toes, and he looked at Ronna, and she gave him that mother look. You know, that look when mom says, "You do it, and you're dead." So she gave him the old mean eye. So he looked back at the lady and said, "So, how much do you weigh?"
Oh,
so it was
even better.
Oh, absolutely. And it just so happened that this was the largest lady in the room. And Ronna ran over to her and apologized. And thankfully, she said, "Hey, it's no problem." She said, "He just asked the one question that everyone was dying to know, but afraid to ask at church." And since then, Tom has passed away. But this story will live on probably long after I'm gone. It is such a great story, and it shows the honesty. That's one thing that our residents exhibit is honesty. We always tell people when they first come in there, don't ask their opinion unless you want their opinion.
Unless you want because it's a honesty, but it's not there's no malice.
No, there's no mean spirit, not a bit. But somebody comes out with a T-shirt, and maybe a young lady says, "Hey, does this shirt make me look fat?" And be prepared, because they may say, "Oh yeah, you look really fat in that. You need to change." And so
I had this happen at Rise Fitness, which is our inclusive fitness program. I don't think we were warming up. We were doing some sprints.
Yeah,
I was working with a young athlete who has Down syndrome, and I was trying to motivate him to do anything. He just wasn't motivated that day, but he was running. And so I was like, "Well, I'll run with you." And I'm trying to play it up a little bit that he was doing a good job. I said, "Whoa, you are really doing so good. This, I don't like running. Running's hard for me." Just with the straightest face you could ever have, he just looked at me and said, "Well, then you need to lose weight." And, can I be mad? I'm thinking, well, you're probably right. Running would be easier if I weighed less. Wasn't really ready to talk about that here, so that's my fault.
The world probably would be a better place, especially church, if people would just be honest when somebody says, "Hey, how you doing today?" That honesty could go a long way and help them out. But that's one of our favorite and funniest stories. It's just awesome.
Well, so I wanted to ask this. So if Riverwood and New Hope are such amazing places and the need for them is so great, then why are there not more of them?
There's probably 30 or 40 or 50,000 reasons why not. Some people disagree with our philosophy of using 10 resident homes. There's probably a lot more out there also that you don't realize. There's a lot of group homes that house 3 to 4 people, but it's still way below what's needed. And with the numbers growing incredibly so, it is a definite problem that's going to continue. The government's already told us that they do not have a plan, even though they know this is going to continue to grow. So we'll have to see where all of this goes.
Because if we're talking about 1 in 4 in the population are affected by disability, one of the things that I've picked up in my time serving, especially from parents, is the concern of their child or their loved one beyond their own life. A lot of their kids are going to outlive them. And so where are they going to outlive them? And it just seems like we could really use more places like Riverwood and New Hope, but I don't, these are certainly not as easy to set up as like an apartment complex.
That's true. There are a lot of requirements, and they're good requirements because they're there to protect the individuals who are using those facilities. And there are bad people out there. There's no doubt about it. So we have to be careful. It is going to be something that's going to have to be addressed by the world, by the church, by individuals, by companies. It'll continue to be there because one reason is our medical, our medicine, our medical operandi, I guess you would say, is so good. Our healthcare here in the United States, we're continuing to see people live longer and longer and longer. So you're right. There's going to be thousands and thousands and thousands of people who outlive their parents. So it is something that needs to be focused on. And anybody's interested, encourage that. Encourage somebody to do something. They can contact us. We're always there. We always like to talk about this. This is our life.
So the final question, and I wanted to wrap this up with this, and you kind of touched on it a little bit. Let's say I had vague information about residential ministry, and I came to you and I said, I feel led. I gotta do something. I want to build one of these things. What's some advice you would give to me?
Take your time. It is a crockpot ministry. It is not a microwave ministry. It will take time. You will have to jump through hoops. You'll have to understand what the state regulations are. You'll have to find someone who wants to get involved. Our director of residential services, she knows quite well the Kentucky regs, the Missouri regs. She's even gotten into the Georgia regs, but also she knows the Tennessee regs in and out. And even then, there's so much there. There is a lot of red tape, but it's worth it. I know just a few years ago that we helped Ukraine open a home over there called Stephen's Home. I can't really tell you much about it because of safety issues. They don't want us talking about it. But when the war broke out, they had to flee to Romania. Some are back in Ukraine. So we've helped people and given them some ideas and some suggestions and some counsel. And we were also just an ear, a big old ear to hear and listen, just so that people could get some of the frustrations off their hearts and off their minds.
You mean there's frustrating parts of residential ministry?
Isn't that amazing?
I mean, I'm sure everybody listening was like, what? Would have never thought that anything with starting
That's
something
exactly
would be.
Right.
So I guess I'm going to just wrap this up and first, thank you for giving us, and I know we didn't really touch on it'd probably be impossible to touch on every single piece of the history of this, but residential ministry is obviously where ability ministry has its roots and its origin, and it's really important. And so if anybody out there is listening and you feel called or led and you say, I kind of want to do this, but I'm afraid, I have no idea where to start, I would just say go to our website, abilityministry.com, and contact us.
That's right.
We can set up a consultation. We can walk you through everything that we've learned and what we have picked up along the way, what works, what doesn't work, the mistakes that we've made, so hopefully other people can avoid them. And we will do everything possible that we can to make that a success for you.
Absolutely. And I want to thank you for allowing me to be on this podcast today. There's such a need. There's so much information that needs to get out. So little time. I appreciate it. I thank you. And I think that you guys are doing a great job with this podcast, and I pray that you'll continue with it.
All right. We'll see y'all next episode. On February 2nd, 22 Day, as it would become known, something unthinkable happened. All of the toilets in public restrooms everywhere mysteriously shrank to miniature size. Tale of the Shrinking Toilets documents the worldwide mass chaos that ensued. Written by Ryan Wolf and illustrated by Adam Bryant, the tale of the Shrinking Toilets book reveals the devastating consequences of an inaccessible world and spins a powerful allegory revealing a hidden epidemic, inviting readers to be change agents. Learn more and get involved by visiting shrinkingtoilets.com.